I used to think monsters only lived in the stories I read to my son before bed. Dark creatures hiding under beds or lurking in closets. Nothing that could hurt us in real life. But I was wrong. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes, they look like ordinary men. They smile at you in the grocery store. They hold doors open. They wave from across the street. And sometimes, they follow you home. My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old, a single mother to a boy named Daniel, who just turned 8. My whole world revolves around him. He's the reason I keep pushing forward, the reason I survive. But this story isn't just about survival, it's about what happens when the life you carefully build, the fragile little bubble of safety you create, is shattered by someone who decides you belong to them. It started small. At first, I didn't even notice. I'd see the same man at the coffee shop near Daniel's school, or standing at the edge of the playground, just outside the fence, not close enough to be suspicious, but close enough that I'd notice. Tall, dark jacket, always watching. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Cities are full of strangers. You bump into people. You see the same faces. Nothing unusual about that. But when I caught him across the street from my apartment building, just standing there in the rain, I felt the first real chill crawl up my spine. I tried to shake it off. I didn't want to overreact, didn't want to seem paranoid. After all, I was alone. I didn't have anyone to lean on. Daniel needed me to be strong, not scared of shadows, but shadows can be patient. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the alley behind my building. I peered through the blinds, heart racing, and saw him again, just standing there, looking up at my window. That was the night I knew this wasn't a coincidence. This man wasn't just passing through my life. He was circling it, studying it, and deep down, I think I already knew what was coming. It's strange how quickly fear can become part of your daily routine. You lock the doors twice instead of once. You check the windows before bed. You learn to scan reflections in store windows as you walk down the street, looking for the shadow that always seems a step behind. For weeks, I told myself I was imagining it, that I was stressed, tired, maybe even going crazy. But the signs kept piling up. Daniel's soccer ball rolled across the yard one afternoon, and when I chased after it, I found something tucked under the fence. A folded piece of paper. No words, just a drawing. A crude sketch of a woman with long hair and a child beside her. My hand shook as I shoved it into my pocket before Daniel could see. Another night. I came home from work to find my front door unlocked. I was certain I'd locked it that morning. I checked every room, every closet, every corner, holding my breath like I was already being hunted. Nothing was missing, nothing out of place. But someone had been there. And then the phone calls started. Always silent, just breathing, sometimes heavy, sometimes soft, never a word spoken. I'd hang up, my hands clammy, my stomach twisting in knots. The police didn't take me seriously. Do you have proof, ma'am? Could it just be prank calls? We can't assign resources unless there's a direct threat. Direct threat. What more did they need? A dead body. I stopped sleeping. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart jump. Every car slowing on the street outside sent me running to check the curtains. But here's the thing about fear. It wears you down, slowly, like water dripping on stone. And when you're worn down enough, you stop reacting as fast. You start missing the signs. And that's when they strike. The night it happened, I was putting Daniel to bed. He'd been restless, complaining of bad dreams. I sat with him until he fell asleep, stroking his hair the way my mother used to do for me. When I finally tiptoed into the living room, the window was open. I didn't open it. and standing in the shadows of my own home was him, the man, my stalker. And for the first time, I saw the monster's eyes up close, cold, hungry, certain, like he already owned me. That's the night everything changed. I froze. My body refused to move, as if my brain hadn't caught up to the horror standing in front of me. He was tall, taller than I'd realized from a distance, broad shoulders under that dark jacket I'd seen 100 times. His face wasn't remarkable, almost forgettable, the kind of man you'd pass on the street without a second glance, and maybe that was the point. He raised a finger to his lips, the universal gesture for silence. My heart slammed in my chest, every instinct screaming to run, to fight, to scream. But my son was asleep in the next room. That was the trap. I couldn't risk waking him, couldn't risk what this man might do if Daniel appeared in the doorway, rubbing his sleepy eyes, asking what was wrong. So I stayed frozen. He stepped closer. I could smell him now. Sweat, leather, something metallic. My breath hitched, and that's when he smiled. "You're even prettier up close," he whispered. The words slithered into me like poison. I bolted. Not for the front door. He was too close. I darted toward the kitchen, toward the drawer where I kept the knives. But he was faster. His arm hooked around my waist, hauling me backward. I kicked, scratched, clawed at him, but he only grunted, tightening his grip. My heel connected with his shin, and he cursed, slamming me against the wall so hard my teeth rattled. "Quiet," he hissed. Or, "The boy hears." Those words. The boy sliced through me. This wasn't random. He knew about Daniel. He had been watching long enough to know everything. A cloth pressed over my mouth. The sharp, chemical smell made my head spin. I thrashed, desperate, my mind screaming that if I went unconscious, I might never wake up. But the fumes were too strong. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was his smile. I woke up in a room that smelled of damp wood and mildew. My head pounded, my throat dry. I tried to move and realized my wrists were bound, rough rope cutting into my skin, my ankles too. Panic surged, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. Daniel. Where was Daniel? Was he safe? I called his name, my voice hoarse, but there was no answer, just silence, broken by the faint drip of water somewhere in the distance. The door creaked open. He stepped inside, carrying a tray, a bottle of water, a sandwich. Like this was normal, like we were playing house. "You'll get used to it," he said casually, setting the tray on a table. "It's safe here, safer than out there." "Where's my son?" My voice cracked, my fear spilling through every syllable. He crouched down, his eyes level with mine. "He's fine. For now, if you do what I say, he stays fine." It wasn't an answer, but it was all I had. I wanted to scream, to lunge at him, to tear his throat out with my teeth if I had to. But I didn't, because I understood something in that moment. Survival wasn't about rage, it was about control. And if I wanted to see my son again, I had to play his game. For now. Days blurred together, or maybe weeks. Time lost meaning in that windowless room. I counted meals, counted footsteps in the hallway, counted breaths just to keep myself anchored. He talked sometimes about how lonely he'd been, about how no one understood him the way I would, about fate. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but underneath it I heard the sickness. Eric. That's what he finally told me to call him. The name felt wrong in my mouth, but I used it. If I wanted to survive, I had to make him believe I was bending. But inside, I was planning, always planning. I studied everything, the way he tied the knots, the pattern of his visits, the jangling of keys when he locked the door. He wasn't careful all the time. Sometimes he left things just within reach. and one night I decided to test him. It was small, almost nothing. When he brought my dinner, I asked for a fork instead of just my hands. He hesitated, then handed me one, a flimsy plastic fork. I ate slowly, deliberately, then set it aside when he wasn't looking. Later, when he came to collect the tray, I slid the fork under the blanket, a tiny act of defiance, a secret. That night, lying on the thin mattress, I held the fork in my bound hands, tracing its ridges with my thumb. Useless as a weapon, maybe, but it was something, proof that he wasn't infallible. The next day, he noticed. His eyes scanned the tray, then flicked to me. "Where's the fork?" My blood ran cold. I forced a shrug. I broke it. On the food, it was useless. For a long, terrifying moment, he just stared. Then, to my shock, he laughed. "Clever girl," he said. Testing me, he leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "But remember, every test has consequences." That night, he left me without water. My throat burned with thirst, my lips cracked. I curled on the mattress, clutching the plastic fork like a lifeline. The lesson was clear. He knew I'd resist, and he wanted me to understand that resistance had a price. But I also learned something. Eric wasn't a god. He could be fooled. He could be played. And one day soon, I would play him for real. The days stretched on, each one heavier than the last. Eric tightened and loosened his grip in unpredictable rhythms, sometimes speaking softly to me, as though we were partners, sometimes locking me in silence for hours, leaving me with nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat. It was a kind of psychological torture. He wanted me to forget where I ended and he began. But what he didn't know was that every cruel word, every withheld sip of water, every false kindness only sharpened something inside me. My will. One night, he sat across from me with a deck of old playing cards. "We could make this easier," he said. "You could stop fighting me." I stared at him, my wrists still bound. "If I stop fighting you, I stop existing." His eyes darkened. He slammed the cards down, the sound echoing through the small room. "You don't get it, do you? You belong here, with me." But I did get it. I understood him more than he thought. I understood that control was his oxygen, and if I wanted to survive, I needed to make him think. I was giving him what he craved, while secretly carving out cracks in his control. I began asking questions, pretending interest. "Where did you grow up, Eric? What made you notice me? What do you want from me, really?" "Sometimes," he answered. "Sometimes." He just smiled. But each answer was a piece of the puzzle. The more he talked, the more he revealed without realizing, and the more I listened, the more I understood. Eric wasn't as strong as he thought. He needed me to believe he was. That's when I knew my survival depended not just on escape, but on breaking him. I started pushing, not enough to trigger his rage fully, but enough to test the walls of his control. One morning, when he unlocked my hands to let me eat, I didn't thank him. I just stared at the food and said, "This isn't enough." His jaw tightened. "It's more than you deserve." "Then why bother feeding me at all?" I asked, my voice calm, measured. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His hand twitched. But then he smiled, that eerie, practiced smile. "Because you need me." But I saw it, the flicker of doubt, the crack in the mask. That night, I hid a piece of bread under the mattress. Another small act of rebellion. Another secret he didn't know about. Each day, I took something small back. A crumb of control. The fork, hidden under my blanket. The bread beneath the mattress. The questions that turned his confidence into uncertainty. But small wars have consequences. One evening, I misjudged. I pushed too hard. I told him, flat out, "You're not my savior. You're my captor." The rage that lit his face was like nothing I'd ever seen. He grabbed me by the throat, slammed me against the wall, his eyes wild. "Don't you ever say that again." My vision blurred. Black dots danced in front of me, and for one terrifying moment, I thought that was it, that I'd die right there, in his hands. But then, he let go. I crumpled to the floor, gasping, my throat burning. He stormed out, slamming the door. I lay there, trembling, but alive, and in the quiet that followed, I realized something important. Eric hadn't killed me, not yet, because he couldn't. He needed me alive, and that meant I still had time. I don't know what made that night different. Maybe it was the way he fumbled with the keys. Maybe it was the storm outside, rain hammering the roof so loudly it masked other sounds. Or maybe it was simply that I was ready. The fork had long since broken, but I'd sharpened one of its tines against the concrete floor, crude, but sharp enough to cut rope if I had the chance. And that night, I made my chance. Eric brought dinner, distracted by the storm. When he turned his back to lock the door, I slipped the sharpened tine from my sleeve and sawed at the rope around my wrist. The storm masked the faint sound of fibers snapping. My heart raced. My breath came in shallow gasps. One wrong move and it was over. But then, freedom. My wrist came loose. I waited, silent, patient. When Eric returned hours later, humming to himself, I pretended to be asleep. He leaned over, his hand brushing my cheek, and that was when I struck. The sharpened tine slashed across his arm. He roared in pain. Stumbling back, I lunged, grabbing the keys from his belt. He was faster than I expected. He tackled me, slamming me to the ground. We struggled, his weight crushing me, his hands clawing at my face. But I had something he didn't: desperation. For Daniel, for freedom. I drove the tine into his shoulder with all my strength. He screamed, loosening his grip. I shoved him off and scrambled for the door, my shaking hands fumbling with the keys. Click. The lock gave way. I ran. The hallway was dark, the storm outside rattling the windows. My bare feet slapped against the cold floor as I sprinted, heart pounding like a war drum. Behind me, Eric's footsteps thundered, his ragged breathing chasing me through the narrow halls. I burst through a back door into the rain-soaked night. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I ran through the mud, branches whipping at my face, the storm hiding my cries. And then headlights, a car on the road ahead. I stumbled into the path, waving, screaming. The car screeched to a halt. A woman jumped out, her umbrella flipping inside out in the wind. "Help me," I sobbed. "Please, he's coming." She grabbed me, pulling me into the car. We sped off, the windshield wipers thrashing against the storm. I looked back, just once, and saw Eric standing at the edge of the trees, rain streaming down his face, his eyes burning even through the darkness. But he was behind me now. I was free. They reunited us at the hospital. Daniel ran into my arms, his little body trembling with sobs. "Mommy, I thought you were gone," he cried into my chest. "I'll never leave you," I whispered, holding him tighter than I ever had. Never. The doctors called it a miracle. The police called it a case. The news called it a tragedy averted. But I call it survival. And survival isn't just escaping the cage. It's finding the strength to keep going after, to heal, to protect, to live. I still see Eric in my dreams. I still wake up some nights gasping, sure that he's there in the shadows. But when I see Daniel sleeping safely in his bed, I remind myself of the truth. The monster didn't win. I did.